Right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give folks just a minute or two to get settled into the room. So thanks for being here and really excited to get into our work today. But again, we'll give folks maybe just a minute. I'm going to be monitoring our attendance and see when it slows down. All right. Well, looks like we have a pretty solid group here. So thank you all for joining. My name is Ariel Finney, and I am pleased to host you all today for our first Interested Parties meeting. All right. So we're pleased to present our draft rules for your consideration, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. Once again, I'm Ariel Finney. I'm the WA Cares Policy and Rules Manager within the Department of Social and Health Services. I'm joined today behind the scenes by several of my colleagues who have been part of the rulemaking process. This presentation today is being recorded and will be made available on the WA Cares rulemaking website. Our purpose for today is to hear feedback from interested parties on our rule text to inform our final rule text, cost-benefit analysis, and small business economic impact statement as we prepare to file our CR 102. We hope to hear feedback today that identifies questions from an outside perspective, as well as call attention to any gaps that you all see in the rules. Our agenda is fairly straightforward today. We will cover some brief housekeeping items before providing a general update on our rulemaking for the WA Cares Fund program within DSH, the Department of Social and Health Services. Most of our time will be used to review and discuss our rule text. We are scheduled for an hour and a half, but may end early if needed. So let's go over a few housekeeping items. Chat is currently disabled. We will make it available when we begin our draft rule text review. If you need to reach me or my team, please use the question and answer feature within Zoom. The recording of this webinar and the slide deck will be available on the website on the screen. Please allow us a few days to process the recording and post it to the website. So for some rulemaking updates, in addition to this rulemaking project that we're going to talk about today, the Department of Social and Health Services is currently working on the following rulemaking projects for WA Cares. We're working on eligible relative care, and we had 2 listening sessions back in December and January that helped inform some of the work that we're doing on that. We are continuing that work, and we'll have more material here to share. We filed a CR 101 for, we actually filed 2 for appeals for beneficiaries and providers. We also filed a CR 101 for rates for approved services. And we have a CR 101 for reimbursements for purchases of approved services by beneficiaries, as well as a CR 101 for notifications to beneficiaries and providers. We will continue to provide updates on rulemaking activity through our WA Cares rulemaking listserv. If you have not signed up already, please make sure to do so on the WA Cares rulemaking website. I will share this website in the chat here at the end of our meeting. But please make sure, if you haven't already, go check out the WA Cares Fund rulemaking website. It'll also be the place where you'll find the draft text that we're going to be talking about today, as well as our CR 101s, any future CR 102s, as well as all of our past listening sessions. All right. We are conducting 2 interested party meetings where we will review draft text. The first is today, April 16th. The second is April 23rd from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. We ask for all comments to be submitted by 5 p.m. on April 23rd. We are reviewing feedback as we receive it, and we will use comments and feedback to inform our draft rule text, our cost-benefit analysis, and small business economic impact statement as we prepare to file our CR 102. Our ask for you all today is to provide those fresh eyes on the rule text. Please let us know what you see and, if possible, what you think could improve the material. And please let us know if you see an impact from the rules for beneficiaries, providers, or others who will be participating or engaging with the program. And if something is unclear, please bring it to our attention. We're definitely looking for those areas that folks may need clarity within the rules, but also if there's an area that we can help folks understand, we certainly want to do that. So some questions to start off before I transition us over to the rule text itself. These are not the only questions I hope that you will be considering today, but this is hopefully going to be a helpful starting point. So as we talk about the rule text today, you kind of know maybe some prompts to work from. So first off, a question that we asked for you to consider is whether the rule text is written in a way you can understand. And then, are the definitions and how they are used clear? Are you clear on the expectations for beneficiaries applying for services? And are you clear on the expectations for providers applying to provide services? So those are some prompts to get us started, but again, feel free to use other prompts as needed, and please feel free to bring up anything that is of question to you today. I can't guarantee that we will have answers to every question that comes up, but I do have a team of people behind me that you're not seeing right now who are going to be taking notes and helping us gather the feedback today for consideration. So please know that the work that we're doing today will be taken back to the team and we will review that. So that is what I promised to you all today. I'm going to take a quick moment here to open up our chat and I will post some material in there. All right. So what I am going to be posting here in the chat, if I can get it copied quite right, give me just a second. I thought I had it all ready, but I copied something else in the meantime. All right. Well, I'm going to ask for some help here from my folks behind the scenes. If somebody could help me put the link to the WCARES rulemaking site and the draft text in the chat. That would be a huge help. I apologize for this little hang up here, but it should be there now. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate that. So we have the draft rule text that's posted on our website, linked in the chat. So if you want to follow along, you're welcome to do so. Today, we're going to be talking about beneficiary eligibility requirements, approved services, and minimum qualifications for provision of approved services. And these were created through the work of Long-Term Services and Supports Trust Commission with further consideration by the WCARES team. Eligibility criteria mirrors the standards that were evaluated for the actuarial analysis that was done for the program and ensures only people who have a long-term care need are able to access the benefit. So as we go through this draft rule text, please know that this has been informed and is really built from the foundation of the work done by the Long-Term Services and Supports Trust Commission and the very important work that they've done to set the foundation for us to build the WCARES program. All right, so I want to confirm before I continue on that you are seeing the PDF of the draft rule text. Looking for any confirmation here from folks who can see the screen, make sure I have the right material up. All right, thank you, Daniel. All right, so let's talk about our rule text here. I'm going to start by just doing a quick overview of the rule text itself. I'm not going to read each section to you, but certainly going to try to do my best to summarize the material. My hope is that you all have had an opportunity to read through this and that this isn't your first interaction with it, but if it is, that's okay. I'll do my best to fill you in on what is being covered here. If you have questions at any, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it looks like the PowerPoint is still showing. Are you meaning to show the
nope.
PDF?
That is exactly what I was hoping to show the PDF. So let me start
Okay.
over.
Great.
Yep. Thank you for calling that out. Okay. Hopefully you can see the PDF now.
Looks good.
Wonderful. Thank you for stopping me there. All right. So we have our draft text here. Once again, I'm going to do a quick overview of all the material, and then we can circle back around. If at any point in time, though, you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand. You can put it in the chat, or you can do the Q&A feature. I think the chat is best, unless it is a very specific question, just so everybody can be informed of the questions being asked and understand where the question's coming from when I answer it. All right, starting off here, we have our purpose and scope. This is going to set the foundation of our chapter. We predict our chapter will be 388116 of WAC. This is going to cite back to our statute of Chapter 50B04 RCW and specifies that this chapter applies to the Department of Social and Health Services. We also link over to rules created by Employment Security Department and Healthcare Authority, as those are other agencies that do have rules associated with WACARES. So you'll see those here in 3 and 4, citing over to their chapters, or excuse me, their titles. Next up, we're going to be moving into definitions. And our definitions is where we're going to be starting off with activities of daily living. We define activities of daily living for 2 reasons here, one of which is as it relates to beneficiary eligibility and assessing for the need for assistance of 3 activities of daily living or more. The other need that we have for defining activities of daily living is in association with the approved services and representing what the approved services can provide. So you'll see activities of daily living cited within the approved services definitions. So within that, we speak to bathing, bed mobility, continence, dressing, eating, medication management, mobility, personal hygiene, and toileting. And excuse me, and one more, transferring. So we talk about activities of daily living. Next up, we talk about approved services, and this is where we take the terms that were used in our statute for what is approved services and define them further to make sure it's clear what these entail, like what is included in the service and at times what is not included in the service. So we speak to adaptive equipment and technology, adult day services, adult family home services, assisted living services, care transition coordination, dementia and behavioral support and behavior supports, education and consultation, environmental modification, home delivered meals, home safety evaluation, in-home personal care, memory care, nursing home services, personal emergency response systems, professional nursing services, respite for family caregivers, services that assist paid and unpaid family caregivers caring for eligible individuals, and transportation. So those are our approved services. And again, the definitions that say kind of what is and is not going to fall within that approved service. From there, we continue on with terms that are used throughout this chapter, starting with the Area Agency on Aging, Benefit Unit, Care Needs Assessment, Custodial Services, Department, Eligible Beneficiary, Eligibility Determination, Evidence-Based Program Provider, In-State Applicant, Instrumental Activities of Daily Living, Level of Assistance, Licensed Practical Nurse, Long-Term Services and Supports, Long-Term Services and Supports Provider Applicant, Long-Term Services and Supports Provider, Own Home, Qualified Individual, and Registered Nurse. So those are our proposed definitions for this round of rulemaking activity. I'm going to continue on here into our beneficiary eligibility determination section. Again, if you have questions at any point, feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat, or use the question and answer feature. We will circle back around though, and I will open up each of these sections for any specific questions if you're wanting to save them to the end. So next up, in the beneficiary eligibility determination section, we speak to application for benefits for beneficiaries. We speak to in-state applicants here, which is a defined term. And so both of these sections are going to apply only for those who are in-state applying for services. We will do future rulemaking down the road for out-of-state participants. Here we talk about the kind of minimum requirements for an in-state applicant to apply for benefits, as well as what they must provide to the department in order to schedule a care needs assessment. Next up, we talk about eligibility determination for in-state applicants. This is what is going to be tying back to what makes somebody eligible or not eligible for the program. Here is where we speak to activities of daily living. And in this case, we're pulling from our overarching activities of daily living definition and applying bathing, bed mobility, eating, medication management, mobility, toileting, and transferring to in-state eligibility criteria. This aligns with the recommendations from the Long-Term Services and Supports Trust Commission. We speak to levels of assistance and what levels of assistance will be applicable for a person's eligibility. We have no assistance, supervision, limited assistance, extensive assistance, total dependence, did not occur or no provider, declined to answer, and unable to answer as options when it comes to how a person performed activities of daily living. Everything, well, no assistance does not make somebody eligible, but supervision, limited assistance, extensive assistance, total dependence does apply. And I think, so for medication management, we have no assistance required, must be administered, declined to answer, and unable to answer. Medication management is again one of those features that we will consider for eligibility, but we do have a little bit different scoring criteria, so that is why it's separated out. In-state applicants are determined eligible for the receipt of benefits when they meet these following criteria. We're pulling this from the statute, as well as bringing in that need for assistance for at least 90 days as recommended by the Long-Term Services and Supports Trust Commission. All right. Next up, we talk about how the assessor will consider or what factors will be considered for determining care needs are going to last for at least 90 days. We have those listed here with A through D. Next up, we talk about that the in-state applicant or their legal representative is responsible for providing the information for eligibility determinations. However, the department with written consent could ask for medical records to support getting information to make somebody eligible. All right, and then we speak to when somebody may need to be reassessed to keep their benefits active, and then how long the department will have to finalize a notice of benefit determination. All right, I'm going to pause here one more time. For those of you who may be just joining us, feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions. You can also use the chat feature or the question and answer feature. If you have questions, I'm going through right now, kind of just summarizing the material, but we will circle back around to go into more questions if anybody has any. All right, next up, we talk about registration and operational standards for providers. We've broken this up to be requirements to provide approved services. So registration and operational standards require that the provider be registered with the department as well as hold a contract for payment. And before a provider can provide any service, they have to have a pre-authorization for services from a beneficiary. So those are our operational standards and registration standards. Next up, we go into minimum qualifications for providers to perform approved services. They must comply with applicable laws, both at the federal, state, and local levels. They must comply with background check requirements that we cite within this chapter. They must not have had a DSHS contract terminated for default. And then they have to hold all current licenses, certifications, credentials, trainings, and authorizations to provide the approved services. And they must not have any of those items suspended or revoked. So I'm not going to go through each one of these items and list out each of the citations here, but we do have them listed out. And I do encourage folks to take the time to make sure if there's a specific service in particular you're interested in, please look through all of those requirements. But for the sake of today and the technical work of that, we are going to skip through that. But if you have questions, again, we're going to have an opportunity here to ask questions about minimum qualifications, and I will open that up here shortly. All right, I'm going to scroll through all of these. Again, we're citing over to business licenses and the applicable requirements here. Let's talk about background checks, though. We did say that background checks are going to be a requirement for providers. We have two sections here really that speak to providers. We call out certain provider types that do not automatically have DSHS background checks ran as part of the licensing requirements that they have. So we called those out in Section 1. And Section 2 say you must apply these background check standards as part of the becoming a registered provider for the approved service. And then for provider types where they are already passing a DSHS or doing a DSHS background check, we cite over to their requirements within their licensing statutes and WACs. We also say here at the end that if any individual required to complete a background check under this section provides verification, then an equivalent background check was completed within 90 days before the date of application, and it is not disqualifying, that individual is not required to complete another background check under this section. We recognize that there can be a lot of work associated with background checks, and we wanted to find an opportunity there to lighten that load a little bit. Next up, we talk about provider registration application. We speak to what the provider applicant must do, in which case they must complete and submit a registration application as directed and required by the department. They must submit any additional application information as requested within 30 calendar days of the first request for information, and then complete the registration process within 90 calendar days of the initial application submission or date. Long-term services and supports provider applicants must be responsive to the department or the area agency on aging assigned to process the application, and provider applicants can withdraw their application at any time for any reason prior to the department issuing a registration. And then we will also provide notice of the registration determination by the department in writing. So if a provider registration application is denied, it would be because they do not meet the requirements listed of our registration and operational requirements. And then the department will notify the long-term services and supports provider applicant in writing when a denial decision has been made and include the following information, which would be date of denial, reason for denial, how to contact the department with questions, and instructions on how to appeal the denial decision. And last, in our rule text, our proposed rule text here is discontinuing a provider registration. The department may discontinue a provider's registration when a long-term services and supports provider submits a written request to discontinue the registration, they no longer meet operational standards, or they no longer meet minimum qualifications. All right, so with that, this concludes the kind of presentation portion of this session. Next up, I'm going to pause here and we're going to just start from the beginning and look for any feedback. I'm certainly interested in hearing comments, questions, feedback. So I look to you all here in the crowd for participation now. If there's certain areas that you want to make comment on, please do so. With that, I'll take a pause and open it up. All right. Well, why don't we just start from the beginning then? Once again, I'm happy to jump around if folks feel like they have a question in a particular area. Otherwise, I'll start with our purpose and scope. See if there's any comments related to this WAC. I'll pause here. Any comments or questions about purpose and scope? All right. Next up, we have definitions. I'll open it up for folks with any comments or questions about our definitions section.
We did get a question in the Q&A from Stephen Foreman. It says, to qualify for WellCare's benefits, someone must be unable to perform 3 ADLs without assistance. But this draft lists multiple levels of assistance. Which one is the triggering level?
Wonderful. Thank you, Andrea. So the triggering level is going to be supervision. So anything supervision or above would be considered with assistance. We do have multiple levels of assistance listed there for our care needs assessment as well as to help support suggested services. But anything supervision and above will be qualifying. All right. And Andrea, maybe you can help speak to this question Joan put in the chat for a section on application of benefits 388-116-2017. What happens to the balance if the beneficiary does not reapply before 12 months?
Sure, happy to answer that. The balance is retained. So if they come back and reapply, they can't get more than the lifetime benefit amount, but anything that's remaining and any inflation that's been applied since they closed, they would have access to at a later date if they still qualify.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Great questions here. I didn't see any questions come up for definitions. So I'm going to move along, but if you do have a question, please feel free again to raise your hand. You can put something in the chat or use our Q&A feature, question and answer feature. Are there any comments or feedback on the application for benefits WAC? All right. We have a question about documentation of identity. And let's see here. What documentation of identity will be required? I think I will start this off, but I'll look to my team if there's more to add here. That I think at this point we're looking for verification of name and where I think where the person lives. I see that listed though under legal name and residential city and state. So I'll pause here and see if anybody here on my team can speak to Muriel's question.
Oh, excuse me. Hi, this is Maria Mungarro, Eligibility Program Manager. And I can speak to the documentation of identity. And yes, so these would be such as like a valid driver's license or passport or ID card, enhanced driver's license. This would be like a standalone document, very similar to the identity verification documents that paid family medical leave has. This would be like United States citizenship and immigration service ID, or we do have alternative documents, and they someone would have to provide two of those documents instead of a one document. I hope that provides some clarification.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you, Muriel.
Yeah, of course.
Yep. And Will, go ahead.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Will Reeves here with WellCares also.
Well, I don't know. It might
Policy
be me.
strategist. If any of you, we're trying to stay in line just with that. I'm sorry.
You're
heard you,
breaking up a
Eric,
bit
sorry.
for me. Yeah, I apologize. I'm not sure
Oh,
if it's me or you, but you're breaking up a little bit on my end.
okay. I'll try again to see if you can hear me. So we're on the Medicaid side, we're not going to require any particular type of verification. And just the standard is, can we verify the identity with the documents provided? So Maria, very helpful with the examples that we're going to do, but just like, again, just like Medicaid, not requiring any particular type or form of verification.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Will. All right. Any other questions on this WAC before we continue on? All right. Let's continue on then to eligibility determination for in-state applicants. I know we had the question earlier from Stephen about this, but any other questions when it comes to eligibility determination for in-state applicants? All right, Muriel, I see your hand up. Let me do my magic here. You should be able to unmute now.
Thank you. So I'm wondering for the determination, I know it includes all of those ADLs, but what if somebody needs supervision, not with a specific ADL, but for instance, with like wandering or decision making or disorientation? Like if someone has, maybe earlier stages of dementia, I know for like the Macintosh SOA programs, they have considerations for that in the application. Will those also be included? So if someone's still bathing, eating, maybe they need just help with their medication management, but then also a family member there to make sure that they're not wandering. Will there be considerations for that?
Wonderful question. And yes, we brought in supervision as our kind of minimum qualifying level here of support needed. And supervision represents that the person completed the activity of daily living and required monitoring, queuing, or setup assistance. And our hope with that is to help capture folks that do need maybe more oversight, but not necessarily the physical assistance or help completing the task. They're able to perform the task, but they need that level of supervision or cueing or reminders for safety. So that has been added and is a qualifying score for eligibility. All right. I see Daniel put a question here in the chat. Will providers be responsible for any part of determining a community member's eligibility for services, or will that be handled entirely during the initial assessment? And eligibility for services for WA Cares is going to be handled within the during the initial assessment, and that will be conducted either by the Department of Social and Health Services or the Area Agency on Aging. So that will not be falling to providers. All right. Wonderful. Well, we'll continue on here to the next WAC here, but if you do have questions on anything that we've already passed by, feel free to still put it in the chat or raise your hand or use the question and answer feature. We're happy to circle back as well. So next up, we move into requirements to provide approved services. And I see Muriel, I will give you permission. You can come off mute now.
Sorry, this is for the last section, but it does mention twice in 5 and 6 a legal representative. For WA Cares, will it be required that a representative has, for instance, official power of attorney? I know for Medicaid services, they tend to use authorized representative, where someone doesn't have to be like the legal guardian or power of attorney, but can still be authorized to represent the person. Is that going to be the case with WA Cares, or do they need those legal things in place before someone else can represent a beneficiary?
Wonderful question. So we are, because we're separate from Medicaid, we do not have authorized representatives. So a person to have an actual representative for themselves or somebody to speak on their behalf would need to have legal representation either through a power of attorney, limited power of attorney, or some sort of court-appointed guardian or conservator. That being said, we are working on an authorized user pathway for someone to have support for navigating BAMS or the electronic side of this benefit. So we are looking at an authorized user path for technical support. That being said, the authorized user does not have the permissions under the law to represent the beneficiary. So they're able to support, but they're not able to be their actual representative when it comes to signing documents or representing the beneficiary to the department. Okay, let's continue on. Next up, we have registration and operational standards. Do we have any comments or feedback on this WAC? All right. Well, let's continue on then with minimum qualifications. Minimum qualifications is a rather large WAC because we break down each approved service and the minimum qualifications associated with that. Does anybody have any comments or feedback on minimum qualifications? All right, and Katie has a question, clarification that provider does not apply to each individual caregiver providing personal care, but rather employers of caregivers. And yes, so I know we are still working on eligible relative care, which we will work on separate from the work we're doing today. In this case, and as it stands for now, um, provider does represent home care agency, CDWA, really those two options. So again, we're still working on eligible relative care. We'll continue our work on that and figuring out what the solutions are for eligible relative care. But provider at this point is representing typically that employer of caregivers. So Muriel said, will there be exemption paths for providers, such as for home care agency that has only been in business for 2 years instead of 3? And I'm going to pause here and maybe look to my team here behind the scenes, if anybody can speak to any exemption paths for providers.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Katie, the Provider Policy Unit Manager. So we're still working through the logistics of how exactly the process will work, but obviously there are situations where exemptions do presently exist for providers. The state will be responsible for contracting a large portion of providers, but then also contracting will be handled through AAAs. There are going to be some allowances and some exemptions that will be available. There is going to be a process where those will need to be submitted and determinations made. It will likely involve, engagement with the department. But again, like I said, we're still working through the final logistics of what that process would look like. But yes, we are anticipating that there will be certain services, especially where we may see exemptions, and kind of what those considerations would look like, and what would be allowable and potentially what would be not allowable. So yes, that is something that will be allowed. And likely will take place during the application process for registration.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katie. John has a question that I'm going to look to Andrea for. It says, in-home care has a requirement on deficiencies. Is this different from the Medicaid requirements?
I believe it's defined a little more specifically here for walk cares, but the intent and the way that it's handled under the Medicaid registration is the same. Yeah, so have no significant licensing deficiencies during the 3-year period prior to registration is how it's currently done through the Medicaid program. We added some additional clarification around what significant deficiencies mean since we needed to put it in our rule.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions about minimum qualifications? All right. Up next, we have our background checks section of WAC. Any questions, feedback, comments on the background checks WAC? All right, Muriel, you should be able to come off mute now.
Yeah, so for the background checks for current Medicaid providers, if we have an active background check that hasn't expired for the Medicaid requirements and they're looking to become a walk cares provider, but their background check is outside of that 90 days, will they need to complete a new background check for walk cares, or can we, going off of what we've received for the Medicaid application for documentation, use those background checks?
All right, great question. I think I know the answer, but I'm not confident. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie.
Yeah. Yeah, so that it is correct. So because Walk Cares is a separate contract, is a separate program, it will need to be a separate background check. We did kind of explore options regarding existing background checks, whether they are with the Department of Social and Health Services or with the Department of Health. But it was determined that because Walk Cares is its own contract and there is the expectation in the contracting process for that background check, we're using that as kind of the standard for when the background checks for Walk Cares, the timeline begins, and they will be required to have another background check for the program.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Katie. All right. Well, I'm going to continue on here, but if you have questions about anything we've covered so far, feel free to put it in the chat, raise your hand, use our question and answer feature, whichever way works best for you. But next up, we have provider registration application. Are there any comments, feedback on this WAC? No, I'm not seeing anything so far. So I'm going to move on. But if you're typing, keep typing. That's okay. Next up, we have provider registration application denial. Any comments or feedback on this WAC? All right. And next up, and I guess our last rule for today is going to be discontinuing provider registration. Any comments or feedback on this WAC? All right, and Muriel has a question in the chat. Will the area agencies on aging be able to deny applications for their area, even if approved by another area agency on aging? And so I'm going to look to our provider network folks, or either Katie or Andrea, I guess, if anybody has a response for that one.
Well, I was going to say, Andrea, feel free to jump in if you had an opinion.
Sure, I think we need to sort that out with the area agencies on aging. The qualifications are universal, so they should not be disqualified in one area if they're qualified in another area. So we would need to confer if that was going to be a decision the AAA wanted to make.
Wonderful. All right, thank you, Andrea. Whitney put in the chat, will there be opportunity to discontinue registration if the provider is unresponsive to requests for additional documentation, perhaps within a specific time frame? And within this, there's kind of two pieces, and maybe Whitney, if you wouldn't mind letting me know which way we're thinking here. On one hand, if they are not providing the information we need to register them to begin with, then their application for registration would be denied because there's not sufficient information to register the provider. If they're a registered provider and they're failing to respond to the department, that would be likely outside of their contract requirements. And may impact their retention of a contract and therefore the retention of the registration. So to answer that, yes, there will be an opportunity for registration to be discontinued. But hopefully it wouldn't come to that. Hopefully we can find an opportunity to for both parties to get what they need. All right. Well, I'm going to open it up one more time. If there's any comments, questions, feedback on any of the material we've covered here today, certainly would love to hear it in whatever way works best. We have chat. You can raise your hand to come off mute, or we have the question and answer feature. You are also welcome to provide written comments or feedback to me directly, and I will have that information for you here in just a minute. But that will be another opportunity, and we are accepting comments and feedback through April 23rd. So Daniel said, will WACARES incorporate assistive technologies or any technologies at all to support medication management? I see
I'll
Katie
defer
commenting.
I was going to say, I'll defer to Debbie if she wants to speak more specifically, but yes, we absolutely will. The adaptive equipment and technology is documented in the rule as fairly substantial, but that does include medication management.
Yeah, and I would tag on that it also includes the services that can be offered through a personal emergency response system. So there'll be two different mechanisms that could help with medication management using assistive technology.
Wonderful. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Katie. All right. I'm going to switch out my screens here for just a second and get us back to where we started. I realized, hopefully I have been sharing my screen this whole time. I'm just realizing that maybe nothing was on the screen. All right, give me just a second here and we'll get the slide deck back up.
You were sharing, Ariel. It's still
Okay.
got the PDF, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. And can you see the slide deck now?
Not yet. Still
All right.
working.
Oh, keeps me on my toes here. All right. Thank you all for your patience and putting up with me here as I work through Zoom. So I will get it in just a second here. All right. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I will have this ready in just a second. I don't know where it went wrong, but we're getting there. All right. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. It should be a slide deck saying slide saying resources. Please.
Looks good.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So we have some resources here. If you've joined us in the past, hopefully these look familiar to you. These are going to be our links here for the DSHS rulemaking website, Employment Security Department rulemaking website, and Healthcare Authority rulemaking website. For any questions related to the WACARES program as a whole, we do ask that you send those over to wacares@dshs.wa.gov. And that should be, they're a great team there that are able to answer all sorts of questions. So feel free to reach out to them. I'm going to drop in the chat here the links that I promised I would share. We have the DSHS website, ESD website, Healthcare Authority website, as well as how to reach me if you want to provide any sort of written comment. You're welcome to do so. All right, I see Chelsea had a quick question though before we close. and Christine answered it. So Chelsea asked for clarification about Daniel's question. Will providers be responsible for any part of determining a community member's eligibility for services, or will that be handled entirely during the initial assessment? And Christine helped out here saying providers will not be responsible. It will be the Department of Social and Health Services or the Area Agency on Aging making those determinations. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, thanks so much for being here, for providing comments and questions. We're really trying to make sure we have a really solid foundation of rules, but also rules that help people navigate the program, feel confident in what they need to do to participate. So if you have any comments after this, please send them my way. We will also be back next Wednesday at 1 o'clock to do this again. All right, thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Thanks for being here.